And it is, you know, historic and unprecedented to have ministers coming to this committee, and I'm glad the PC members are on side now since they did vote against my motion to bring you here, but I'm so glad that you are here. And I want to ask first about item 13 in the previous climate action plan was be carbon neutral in its operations, facilities, and vehicles by 2030. Speaking of DTI, the new plan has item 17 saying prepare an in-depth government GHG reduction plan by 2024 that will detail how the province will achieve emissions reductions in the range of 20 to 40% in its buildings and its fleet by 2030. And so the first action was not complete. Can you speak to how far you got on the first action and why this one, which is arguably less ambitious, replaced the previous action? Thank you.
So is this the actions in our first plan?
So the first one was to be carbon neutral in DTI's operations by 2030. In the new plan, it's now make a plan to reduce emissions by 20 to 40% by 2030. So how far did you get on that initial be carbon neutral goal, and why was it replaced with the new one of lowering by 20 to 40%?
Well, we'll search for the first answer. Why it was replaced, I don't know. Your committee did that. You guys made the recommendations out of this committee, did you not?
Well, I don't think that this committee would have, I don't think this committee specifically recommended that, but presumably DTI also agreed to this. Sure. We didn't write this.
You didn't write the recommendation? No, you signed off on it? You just signed off on it and agreed to it at some point?
Well, one of the reasons that we're still looking at it is because I still have questions about it.
Yeah. So obviously it would be an ongoing thing, and I'll get some information on how far we did complete.
Thank you.
But it would be something that is ongoing, obviously, and will continue to be ongoing when we adapt to the technology that's available to us to do better, obviously. And we're all eager to do that. But just give me a second, and I'll see how far we did get through on those first recommendations.
Thank you.
So I actually do appreciate the conversation from you, Ms. Mitton, on this. There were a number of things, obviously, that were completed, and I could go through them all. But I would actually offer to provide you with a detailed list to the committee. Yeah, but I will say that I think it was just really discovered. It was really discovered or realized when transitioning to the new plan that a lot of the action items, out of the 118, a number of them were fairly ambitious and maybe weren't quite attainable in the time that we allotted for them, or maybe they weren't very clear on how we could get to those places. So, you know, we have did a number of things from the previous plan, but it was ambitious, and with the consultation with the Climate Change Secretary, we moved to number 17, which is a little more clear, and it does give us a little better target. And I'm not going to read it to you because you would understand them as well as anybody. I know you do. I have faith in that. But we'll continue to work at that. But for the sake of your interest of your time, I'm not going to go down through all of the specific things, but we'll send them off to you. You're welcome.
Yes, so I guess, again, part of why we're doing this is to ask the question, is the new climate change plan ambitious enough? Are these targets going far enough to get us where we need to go as we face the climate crisis? And I do think DTI is one of the departments that feels the impacts of climate change the most. And so, yeah, I guess I just have concerns that's scaling back the ambition of where we need to go in terms of energy efficiency and emissions reductions with government buildings and fleet by 2030. So I don't know if you have a response to that. If not, I'll keep going and ask you about the isthmus.
Well, we'll definitely leave time for the isthmus. Yeah, response. So, you know, just because, you know, we don't maybe put our goals or appear to put our goals as ambitious, it doesn't mean we can't exceed them. And we will continue to work at that and exceed those goals here at DTI. You're right. DTI has the most impact, or can have the most impact on climate change and mitigating those circumstances. I am very confident that we will try to exceed those goals because we've exceeded them overall in the province with carbon emissions being, you know, the leader in the country with 34%, I believe the number is now, below the 2005 level. So we're getting there, and some people would say we got lucky, but I think it's some of it's good management too. You can't be all luck. You don't win the race just on luck. But there's a lot more to do, and we'll continue to do that, obviously, and we'll see how much more our emissions lower by the time we get to 2030 with Beldoon coming offline, and what do we replace that with, and that'll get us closer to carbon neutral, I'm sure. But we have a few years of runway ahead of us, but it's not going to be enough to backfill Beldoon. But it'd be really interesting to see how Nova Scotia fares when their plants come offline, because they have a lot more to gain. So we'll see if they catch up to us in the percentage below the numbers. So.
Well, as you said, there was some, you know, good luck and timing involved in the numbers so far. And I guess, not to put too fine a point on this, but this is a really important goal, and that's a big range, 20 to 40%. Why not 40%? That's where are we going to end up? It might be just 20%, when previously the goal was carbon neutral, and that came from an all-party committee who thought that you know, that would be something to aim for. So 20% is not much, really. 40. Half of 40, which is far from carbon neutral. So I'm just concerned with even that range. That's not even a very specific goal. It is more specific, but.
Well, I can't comment on 20 to 40 if that's appropriate or not, really. And I appreciate your concerns, Ms. Mitton, on the number that was chosen. It's a far cry better than saying 10 to 30. And if you want to say 40 to 50, then maybe we're setting a goal that we can't reach. I don't know how that shakes down. But what I do know is that we'll continue to strive for better, as we always do. And you know, as we continue to build more new buildings, new schools, with a capital budget this year, a record-breaking one, which is needed because of inflation and the technicalities around these new buildings and the green infrastructure that needs to go into them. It's very expensive. So we will get there in time. I guess everybody heard the news that we're going to go to the federal backstop on the carbon tax, which will create some other challenges as far as money return, because we know that the federal government isn't returning all the money back to the province that they should be. So maybe with the help of this committee, I can get a letter drafted to Minister Guilbeault, and we can press on him and Minister Freeland to send the money back to New Brunswick that's owed to us, so we can keep investing. And get to those targets.
Okay, so I would like to ask you, not about that topic, but about what funds will be in the budget to deal with the Chignecto Isthmus. As you've already stated, it is an important trade corridor, it's important for energy infrastructure, it's important for a lot of things. It's also keeping my community from flooding. So can you speak about what funding is going to be in the upcoming budget? What does it look like in the short term? Because I'm very concerned about the timelines we're dealing with here. Any year, this could go.
I just, for the interest of time, want to get right back to you as best I can, Ms. Mitton, because this actually is a lot longer discussion than the 3 minutes you have left, and I apologize for that. You guys actually should have set my time at an hour each for each party, but you know, you guys set the rules, so right. So as you know, this is actually a long-term plan, a lot longer than I'm surprised that it's a 10-year plan, and I actually made comments at our infrastructure federal meetings in November that I'd like to see it cut in half, but by the time you get into design work and permitting, it's probably not possible. But 10 years out is a long ways, and you're right, next year could be the one. Fiona could have been it. We don't know. And if that piece of infrastructure fails us, you know, not only is the Tantramar area in trouble, but the province of Nova Scotia is closed off. You know, and yeah, we have our port here in St. John that can pick up some of the slack, but the capacity just isn't there, so we need that done. So I actually talked to the Minister of Infrastructure from Nova Scotia yesterday, and we talked about funding models and what that looks like in the near term. We've also been talking with Minister LeBlanc, and he is very keen to get us set up with a funding model right away. Obviously, the timeline said the first 5 years is planning and design. Still seems like a long time, but it is very complicated mitigation there. We are going to do some Abateau work, obviously, down in your area, and I talked to, is it Mayor Black? Mayor Black from, I don't know what the new name of the entity. And on Saturday evening, and I discussed with him having the opportunity to come down and sit with you and his council and anybody that's really interested, a small group, discuss how we work with the folks on the other side. I know I'm going to run you out of time, but
yes, and
you go ahead and we'll talk about the next piece later. Anyway, we'd like to sit down with the
yes.
transportation minister from the other side and the other mayors.
Yes, let's do that. And I've been speaking to some of the same people you're speaking with, Minister LeBlanc, Mayor Black, and so yes, let's get together. But let me ask you one more question, which you just brought up, what I want to ask about dike maintenance.
Yes.
So for some reason, it's actually been paid for out of the Climate Change Fund instead of just regular DTI budgets for some of these years. It hasn't been more recently. But I I'm very concerned that it's not enough funding and that there's not a long-term plan. Frankly, there probably needs to be a national plan because we're not the only province who has this, and it's not just the Chignecto Isthmus. So what is the long-term plan to really deal with this issue? Because it's not going away, and a lot of communities are at risk. This is a really important piece of infrastructure. Can you talk about the long-term plans to really deal with this infrastructure that's quite old, frankly, the dikes and the Abuedo? Thank you.
Apart from the isthmus, the dikes and the Abuedo, okay.
Yes, yeah, not just the isthmus. There's dikes protecting most of my riding and other places too. Thank you.
Ms. Mitton, we do have, we share the same feelings on the national interest as far as abattoirs in general, right, and dikes. But we can't wait for a federal strategy, obviously, on that. We have to protect our own interests here at home. And what else? What's this now? Okay. Well, you'd be aware of this, though. In the 21-22, the Fundy Dike assessment was completed, so now we're working off of that. It is the next steps, obviously, is a substantial amount of money, and we have requested some money to come into this year's budget to continue on with that project down there. I wouldn't be able to say until budget's passed in the spring, obviously, of how much is requested, or I guess I wouldn't even know yet if we're approved. But it is at top of mind to come down and to begin some of that work, and maybe we can incorporate that into those discussions as well. And maybe my previous counterparts have been down and done that in the past, and I apologize if I'm just doing the same thing over and over. It happens a lot in this business when a new minister comes in and they just don't know what they don't know, but I have a keen interest in advancing some of those issues there. I'm guaranteed a maximum 18 months here right now, so time is of the essence, I guess, but if we can get some things locked into some budget items and have somebody else carry the torch, and we will do that. I appreciate your questions, and there's a lot more going on down in the Tantramar region than I think some of us realize, and how important that area is to our commerce and our trade here in the province. Thank you. And then